So welcome to episode 4 of Michael McCoy's Garden, which is the second half of an entry from the book dated the 14th of September 1997. The compact size of the house makes it necessary for us to build some sort of studio or office in which I can work, and provides a good opportunity to create a strong focal point in the garden. In most cases, including ours, one really needs to keep the eye and therefore the attention within the close boundaries of a small garden. Unless the boundaries are invisible, ours couldn't be more visible or obtrusive, and the extended landscape inviting, one needs a powerful centre of interest within the garden to create a pleasing and complete composition. We also need to draw the eye away from the house and keep it away. For this important function, which will have to be fairly low budget, we'll probably build a corrugated iron shed. I'll try to track down an old door and some windows so that it has a degree of rustic charm and which we can paint in berserk colours. They might be the only colours in the garden for 5 months of the year. That's the high price you pay for living in a climate capable of growing the choicest woodlanders. It was relatively easy to work out how to fit all this in. The placement of the trees gave no choice about the position of the woodland, and all the rest just fell into place, which is just as well given the speed at which it must all happen. Then a friend did the cruelest thing and introduced an alternative. He suggested turning the whole thing around 90 degrees, which would allow the border to be much longer and the gravel garden larger, though reducing the vegetable garden a bit. Call me highly strung, but it threw me out completely for a day or two. I could see that I was doing everything in my power to discredit the alternative so that there'd be no choice. Then I finally clutched at a reasonable straw and convinced myself that I didn't want that much herbaceous border. They're too hard to keep going over a long season, and anyway, it would probably look too grand in my little block with my little house. With a sigh of relief, I returned to plan A. One of the things I've learned over the last 15 years of gardening is that old rules about the right time to do things are generally highly flexible, but not those involving the sowing of seeds. If you want seeds to perform in the season in which they're sown, they must be sown at the right time. The success of my garden this year is going to be highly dependent on annuals being capable of reaching their full potential within one growing season, hence the name, obviously, and in many cases requiring no more than a couple of months to reach their best. The tall annuals I need to provide an immediate sense of volume really need to be sown now, or at least in the next few weeks. So I spent some heavenly time poring through the seed catalogues this week, those from Diggers and Kings, and I've ordered some from Yates. Thank goodness the popularity of seeds is returning, and it's now a commercially viable proposition to produce an extensive seed catalogue with a far larger range than your usual hardware stand. There's nothing more satisfying than going through them plant by plant and marking beside all those that take your fancy. Admittedly, the experience is somewhat tainted when you add up how much it's all going to cost and are forced to go over the list again and again, prioritising them. 2 of the orders are now in the mail. Last Friday evening was perfectly still and warm, totally uncharacteristic of this time of the year. A friend and I spent an hour spraying off almost the entire lawn in the backyard in preparation for the massive soil improvement that is going to be necessary. Gosh, it's amazing to read that and read about how enthusiastic I was about seeds in those days and how it really looked like the seed industry was on some kind of rebirth, because here we are 20 years later and it looks like the absolute opposite is happening, and seeds are becoming really harder and harder to source than they ever were. Things change remarkably fast. You know, in the 40 years or so I've been into gardening, I've seen the rise and fall of so many different movements and so much enthusiasm for plants and then away from plants and back to plants again. It's on a constant shift, and you know, who knows where it's going to go now. This moment in COVID, in the middle of this COVID-19 crisis, seems to be a time where so many people are really re-engaging with the idea of gardening, and not just to grow vegetables, but with an understanding that the nurturing of their nest, of their home, is such a worthwhile thing when we're spending so much time there. And in doing so, I feel like people are really discovering a really strong connection with the outdoors and with the soil and the seasons. Bring it on. And join us for tomorrow's episode of the reading of Michael McCoy's Garden.